My sister lives in Arkansas, and her church community came together and called it the Tapestry Program. And so people came together and they wanted to dignify a foreigner, regardless of what age they were. And so they bought a house, they redid it and everything, and they found a couple, this young couple, that really needed a leg up. They had lost their children, and this was their primary reason of wanting help, but they also needed shelter right away. So they gave them shelter, and they needed their GED, they needed a job, and they sat down with them. They had talked to their families, brought all this information together, and said that if, we'll help you get a job, we'll help you get your GED, we'll help you get your children back. And it didn't work out.
Yeah. But it's not supposed to work out every time.
Right.
We need to accept, yes.
But I think they thought it was going to be easier by helping them, but they had lived in poverty their whole life.
Yes.
And there was a lot going on there.
Yeah. But we're going to talk about that in a moment, but let me address, because that's very important. The problem is that when we have these comprehensive solutions to poverty, I don't believe in comprehensive solutions to poverty, Why is that? Because we focus always on what they need. You see, you need this, and you need this.
They told them what they needed.
Absolutely, but the problem is that we still focusing on the needs, and we hope and expect that because we are giving people alternatives to every part of their lives, they're going to embrace those alternatives. But the reality is that if you take care of me in all the needs I have, what is there for me to do? So we become passive recipients of magnanimity instead of active participants in lives built by ourselves. What we sometimes need to do is to challenge people in one aspect of their life. And for example, if you have a food distribution program that is about giving food away, there's something wrong with your food distribution program. Because the food distribution program should be, the goal should be the communication of a skill or a value. A communication of a skill or a value. And the food is simply the instrument to lead you towards a better existence. And then you take those values and those skills, and then you apply those to the other needs you have in your life. But if you give me food, you give me clothing, you give me shelter, you pay my bills, you give me more food, you pay more of my bills, turkeys are flying all over the place during Thanksgiving, you give me the toys for Christmas, why bother getting out of poverty? There's no incentive to getting out of poverty. And then we expect that the person will respond to those opportunities. In reality, what that person needs is something else. Something else that will spark that engine inside of her that will respond at least to one of those offers. And when that person sees success in that part of his or her life, then there is the hope that that person will see success in other parts of their life. We first have to ask people what they bring to the plate, instead of what is in the plate for them. What they bring to the plate instead of what is in there for them. Because what happens is that most of the time, I have heard that story so many times, we place in front of people all these opportunities and they did not respond. They were not ready to respond. They were not ready. They were not flourishing. And a person who languishes, it doesn't matter what you put in front of them, it doesn't matter. People have two alternatives when they are in that situation. They get angry at you because you challenge them and they were not ready, so then they lash at you. And it's not you, it's that they are internally realizing, I want this, but I can't respond to your offer. But I'm going to lash at you to change turn the tables, or feel sorry for themselves. And I have seen many people sit down on the side of the road and see all kinds of opportunities come in front of them, and they don't realize them. They don't realize it. In race, the same happens. People, well, we get angry at white people. We start fighting at them. Change, do this, do the other, and we become activists. In my area, I know very well the director of the NAACP is always doing all kinds of, there are good people in that organization, but I'm talking about this individual. And we had to rescue his family almost daily for all kinds of problems there was in his own family, and he will not attend to that. How can I trust you to change society if you cannot change your own family, So we had to, sometimes it's difficult to deal with situations like the one you described, and so many times has been described to me by people, and that's the problem, is that we think that poverty is a lack, when poverty is what? Human flourishing, the lack of human flourishing.
So I feel like you're just explaining something with that. Ask what do they have to bring to the plate before you, which is building capacity within someone in poverty to be able to respond in a more strengthened way. That's interesting. I never thought about it like that. And now it's opening all kinds of thoughts I've had about frustrations I've had that were, I never thought about it like that.
I'm sorry. In the second part, we're going to get a break now. We're going to talk about the principles that we need to use. It's called the 7 principles of effective compassion, and what we call the human flourishing model that could help you tremendously in finding ways to help people to discover that they are the answer to the problems in their lives. That they are the answer, not us, that we are there simply as what? Witnesses to the grandeur of people changing their own lives. We have that great blessing from God to be witnesses. Instead of being rescuers, we are there to presence, to experience how people transform their lives with our help, and how God is the one who works in us. It's not us working on people. Yes, sir. You have.
Yeah. In today's society, we are talking about the welfare system. My wife and I do work with homeless down in Milwaukee, and we do it's Morning Glory Ministries, and we do serve food and clothing and children. Got to know some of these people very well, and they even started serving in the church. The problem is, we have gotten some of these people, some of them got jobs. I have one gentleman, he's probably 38, 40 years old, his name is James. And 2 or 3 times I've asked him, he's able-bodied to work. And it's like, James, can we help you find a job? And he goes, I only work for cash, because he doesn't want anything to interfere with that check that he's getting. So he doesn't want to take that chance. There's another lady named Janice, and she able-bodied, but she goes, no, I'm on disability and I don't want anything to come and interfere with that check.
We are fighting a two-headed monster. It's sin and the systems we are creating that incentivize dependency and entitlement. And not only with the poor, the first ones entitled are the corporations, the big corporations. They go to the government with their lobbies, and they are entitled, and they are on welfare too, the big ones. So welfare is not just for the poor, it's for the rich too. And then the rest of us are in the middle, You know how many times I have spoken with teachers who tell me, Ismael, thank you for what you're doing with these kids. No one pays for my school supplies for my kids. The rich don't need anyone to give them anything because they have what they want, and then these kids get all this free stuff, and I'm here working hard, and no one comes to bat for me. So we are fighting strong forces. But I believe that the success of the Christian is to be faithful. Mother Teresa said it very well. We are not called to be successful. We are called to be faithful. And as long as you are faithful to the truth, you are being successful. People sometimes get the lives they want, and you have to accept it. And it's hard for us as Christians to do that, because we had this rescuer mentality, But as long as you are faithful to the truth of the gospel, you are being successful. I think we have, yes.
I'll just, one thing before we take the break, because, you know, I think we all have those stories about, that are heart-wrenching about, you know, the guy who doesn't want to give up the disability check. I mentioned the Joseph Project. Who knows about it? Well, I've been to the Joseph Project to see their alumni meetings a number of times. It looks like, have you been there?
I haven't, but I've heard.
You're not in it. You hear the opposite at the Joseph Project alumni meetings. That's where they have the dozen or 15 or so new incoming students, but they bring in a couple, I've seen it with one, I've seen it with 6, alumni who have gotten jobs through the Joseph Project. Those people will come and they'll tell the story to the incoming crowd that will say, do you know how good I feel because now I have a job? And they will talk about things like, my kids look at me differently because I have a job. So that's the exact opposite, where some people who may have the choice where they could say, I'm just going to stay on the check, and they're choosing not to. And the numbers from the Joseph Project, I think I heard last night, was it like 480 full-time placed? And the numbers are that even though this goes back 3 or 4 years, I think they said 48% are still in the job that they took. So even after all those years, and some of them may have moved on to a different job, but a very high percentage of them stick in the jobs that they're in. So that's kind of the opposite side of the story about people who are thrilled and brag about being able to get and keep a job.
We're going to have a quick break, but let me tell you this. Don't get too frustrated with changing your ministries totally. I believe in baby steps. You know? You just make a small movement in the right direction, and don't worry about things. And slowly, that little success will bring another success, and then a realm of possibilities will open in front of you because you took the first step, and then another step, and another, and eventually you'll change the things you do. So don't get frustrated that things don't change. If you are giving food, keep giving the food. Don't stop. I'm not saying to you, but begin to think about it, pray about it, discuss it with your teams, and begin to find ways to move in the right direction. And with baby steps, then you soon will be running in that direction. We'll take 5 minutes and we'll go away. Mark?
Well, I just want to address two of them. I work with this man, and we've also done a Dignity at Work project, which is very much like the Joseph project. And last night we spoke to Pastor Jerome, who runs the Joseph project. There are some people who are not ready for a job, and they are not ready for these programs, the Jobs for Life that we do, called the Joseph. In fact, Pastor Jerome said last night that they scrutinize the ones that they take into the program very heavily in order to get the good results out the back. There are a lot of examples that I can give, but these people, the one on the disability check, or the one with the house and everything else, they're not ready to take the step of activating their own engines yet and wanting a job. Some people don't want the job, and if you take them into your program, they're not ready for it. So you have to choose. You have to somehow be able to screen who comes into these programs and who you help. Some don't want help yet; they're not ready. So
this is what's happening in the church today in America. 62% of churches give food away, 55% housing. But look at the bottom. 2% of churches do anything related to employment. 2%. 2% of them. I don't say stop giving food away. I simply say flip that chart, flip that chart and begin to see that a job is so important in the lives of people. I know it's difficult for churches you don't have to give the job yourself, but find ways to help people find ways, and entrepreneurship is so crucial. That's why we started the Self-Reliance Club with children, because we want children to fall in love with the idea of being free. It's not about creating a tremendous business. It's about falling in love with freedom, falling in love with the idea that they have what it takes to change their lives by their choices. And eventually in their lives, hopefully, they will not want dependency simply because it doesn't feel right. They are now used to take care of themselves. And even if there's benefit later on in life, independency, they are not going to choose that path. You know? All we can do is propose. We propose. You cannot make people believe in Christ. You propose it to them, no? And then they respond or they don't. You do your job when you propose. And it's up to the people to embrace what you propose. Next slide, Mark. The third one is, we spoke about that, comprehensive systems of care. Avoid that. It's called the principle of exit. Means that you have to have a program that has very well-defined goals and a timetable. It starts here and it ends here. And you put fire on your own feet, because now you have a very defined set of goals, expectations, and an end to the program. And then you can assess whether or not you were successful. And when you know that there is an end to it, then you start working on it because you want to be successful. It's called the exit system. The poor are not your wards. Accept failure. We discussed that. It's okay. It's not failure when you propose and give people the opportunity to choose what is good. Allow space for individual action and create a sense of urgency. When you do those things in your ministry and in your program, you are in the right direction. The next one is rediscover our individuality. We discussed that. We are individual human beings. We are not members of groups. You know, the poor, the rich, blacks and whites. I mean, it's crazy. We don't see each other because we are so focused on that. That creates the idea of victimhood. Activism replaces activity, and we have to reject this entitlement mentality. Continue, Mark. These are the principles. Back to the basics. Subsidiarity is a Catholic principle that simply says that what a community of a higher order should not do for a community of a lower order what it's not supposed to do. Those communities to which you belong directly have the first line of assistance. Which ones are those communities? Well, you belong directly to your family, your neighborhood, your civic associations, your church, your business community, and then to the government, and then to the, you see what the problem is, that we had tied the individual at the bottom all the way to the bureaucracy at the top, and we bypass those basic communities that are the flavor of life. Like we were discussing the family. If the family is destroyed and substituted, we are in trouble, because the family is the bedrock of civilization. As the family goes, so goes the nation. But when you tie the individual all the way to the bureaucracy, we are hurting people. Look at the history of blacks in America during the segregation. You know, one of the most wonderful experiences in my life is speaking with older African American men. They talk to me about their lives, and two things are always there. Number one, they hated segregation. Who wouldn't? You have an entire society that hates you and is not there for you. But the second thing happens when I speak with them. They tell me that they long for the days of segregation. And you know why? Because even though, and precisely because the outside society was not there for them, they bound together. They help each other. They were poor, but what they had was built by themselves. They had their own organizations, their shops, their businesses, and they helped each other and supported each other. And that kept the community strong, even in the face of oppression. And that is what we are substituting. And there were two communities in those days that sustained them. The first one was the family, and the second was the church. And if I needed help, I will go to my pastor. But my pastor will tell me, I'll help you, but I better see you on Sunday. You better treat that woman right. You better stay in the straight and narrow. There was a moral expectation attached to the gift. And that moral expectation kept the community strong. But here comes the government commissar with a check in the hand, suddenly, to make you free, when you are now dependent on that bureaucracy. And they come and ask you, what's your name, what's your social, here's their check. Here's the reward for your poverty. And now I don't have to listen to my pastor and to my family. I'm free because I can take care of myself. But in reality, I'm now a slave of impersonal forces that don't really care for me. And that is the problem, that we have substituted those basic communities. And the church has to reclaim its primary place in assisting the poor. One of the first things I did when we started the Institute, I told my board, we are not going to receive government funding. We don't want it. We don't want it. Because I cannot teach self-reliance when I myself am dependent on the government. And many nonprofits do exactly that. Many of them go to the government, get money, and then come to you. And then they have a nice story that makes you cry, and they get into your pocket. And they keep doing that again and again. No, we decided, if people don't support us, we should disappear. That is the discipline of the market. If you don't buy my product, that is a signal to me that I should be doing something else. That is the signal to me that this is not my line of work. I better change or get out of it. So subsidiarity is so important. The church, the family, those are first. Bureaucracies, corporations, governments, secondary. They're supposed to help, come in, help, and get out. But when have you seen the government come in and get out? Never. They come in and stay in. And in the process, they weaken the fabric and the community in the name of helping people. And churches can do the same. It's not just government. Churches can do exactly the same. Sphere sovereignty, you should know about this because this is an evangelical principle. It's developed by the great Abraham Kuyper that simply compares society to a human organism. The organism has different organs, and every organ has a very specific and narrow purpose within your organism. And as long as that community stays within its narrow scope, you have a healthy organism. But what happens when we begin to overcharge one organ in the organism, like your heart, you get sick. And that's exactly what has happened with us, because we have surrendered our responsibility towards each other, and we have deposited it in the hands of the state. And then the state is overcharged, and the community is getting sicker and sicker. And then we blame the government when in reality we have surrendered our responsibility. It's our fault. Don't blame the bureaucracies. They are trying to respond to something that they are not equipped to respond, because only people can love people. Bureaucracies cannot love people. They can try to just give you some food and help you with this and the other. They cannot love you. But it's easier for us to tell the government to do it. And it's not an imposition. When people tell me that, they're telling me more about themselves and what they think about what work is than about the poor. Every time I hear these politicians say, we should not make the poor work for what they get, they are diminishing the dignity of people. Because we have been made for family, and we have been made for work. The next one, look at what has happened to marriage in America. Disappearing. The boyfriend-girlfriend model is substituting the husband and wife model. No wonder we're in trouble. It doesn't work. Even studies tell us that couples who are living together and are not married make less money than couples who are married. Those who tell you that marriage is just a piece of paper, they don't know what they're talking about. There is something in marriage that is important, especially for males. Because when the male doesn't marry her, in the back of his mind, it's always, after all, I'm not married to her. But when they marry, suddenly they work longer hours and they make more money because they realize that responsibility. There are 3 things that you will do and will not be poor in America. Get a high school diploma, get married and stay married, and have a child only after you're married. When you do those 3 things, 98% of people in America, regardless of race, are not in poverty. Think about that for a moment. It's not that difficult, and at the same time, it's so difficult to fix this. At the same time, 82% marriage drops the probability of child poverty by 82%. Think about that for just a second. We've spent billions of dollars in worthless government programs to end poverty, and if we just strengthen families, poverty will end. Poverty will end. And the next one is work. Let me go to that one. But think about that for a moment. In America, if you receive funding from the top 5 welfare programs in the nation, you will make in Hawaii the equivalent of $60,000 a year. But the average worker in Hawaii makes about $36,000 a year. So work is irrational. It makes no sense to work if that is the reality. Don't blame the poor. I like the 60,000. Don't blame them for responding to the systems we have created. I have to say this in all honesty. Most people do not receive support from the top 5 programs at the same time. That is, if you were to receive. Most of the time, that's not the case. And most people on welfare work. That's the reality. They are not lazy bums just waiting. No, they're hard-working people. The problem is the incentive. You see, that's the problem. Because once they are in the system and they see these numbers, what is the incentive? To stay there, to see if I can qualify for another one. Maybe I can and maybe I can't. You see? So we are creating incentives to keep them where they are instead of incentives that strengthen them and support them as they try to change their lives because they work and they want to work. Some people say, well, you're attacking the poor. No, I am defending their dignity. That's what I'm trying to say, because I believe in them. I know they're hard-working people. And we have to create systems, again, that reflect their nature. That's the key here. The next one, and this is the model we have created in the Freedom and Virtue Institute. We call it the human flourishing model. And we say that every program should be simple because freedom is simple. Bureaucracy is complicated. Freedom is simple. That's why when we go to programs like the Self-Reliance Clause, we don't want to introduce new activities. We just redefine existing activities. And to discover the entrepreneurial vocation that is embedded in that activity. The second is practical. Choose something that really makes an impact in the lives of people. One thing. And if you can make a real impact in one aspect of the lives of people, you have made a contribution to their lives, because now they are ready to take care of the other parts of their life. They take the initiative and you follow. That's the way it is. They take the initiative and you follow. Meaningful, meaning, as I said before, that the values you communicate through your program are more important than what you do for people. The values are communicated, are intrinsic and important. What you give to the people is only instrumental. It's personal, it's measurable. We measure in lives transformed, not on bags of food or how much money we give to people. And finally, replicable. In other words, that this can be done without you. And that's how we infect an area. When you do something that is so effective and so simple that others can do without you, you are being successful. Although you are probably erasing your own job, but that's okay if your goal is to really transform your community. You know? Many organizations start great and they eventually think that they're so important, that they're absolutely necessary, and they start dying at that moment because they become the substitute of the bureaucracies of government. And they become this mini bureaucracy that is so important and necessary. And these are the 7 principles of effective compassion. We are just going to go quickly through them because we don't have the time. But affiliation, connecting with family and community. Never bypass the family. The first question you ask is, who should be helping you in this case? It's not how may I help you. No, think about it. Who should be helping you? Who surrendered his responsibility towards you? Or what did you do to break some relationship that you have now you need to now restore so you can come back to wholeness? Happened to me years ago. I opened in my ministry work, and here comes this Haitian guy crying, telling me, Mr. Hernandez, I'm homeless. Could you give me some money for a couple of weeks in a motel? You know, I felt so sorry for the guy. I was going to write him a check for 3 months, you know. But something deep inside of me told me, don't do it. And we had a long conversation until he blurted that he had been in a homeless shelter. We called the homeless shelter. He had been expelled from 2 homeless shelters for misbehavior. And we went back and we convinced him to take him to his home, Lehigh Acres in Southwest Florida. We went there, middle-class area. To the door comes this lady, his mom, and says, Mr. Hernandez, I don't want him here. He uses drugs. He tries to hit me. He doesn't behave. I don't want him here. So what would I have done if I write that check? I would have been participating in his sin. The only thing, he had something to do first. He had to repent and make steps towards wholeness. And then I will come alongside. But sometimes we respond to this emotional desire. And why is that? Because we have not asked the right questions and we have not connected with people in their reality. Bonding, yes?
So take that example, put it in Wisconsin on a 0-degree day. You have somebody who's addicted to drugs or alcohol outside their freeze. How do you?
Yes. There are difficult cases. There's another principle that tells us that there is a difference between a crisis situation of need and the condition of poverty itself. In a crisis situation of need, you help, period. You help. If I see you bleeding on the side of the road, I don't come to you and tell you, hey, be self-reliant. No, no. You are bleeding, you need my help at that moment. Now, if you are there again next week, I know that there's some other problem, you see? But at that moment, I had to come and help you precisely because through no fault of your own, or even through your own fault, you cannot help yourself, you know? And then I become like scenery in the drama. I become the protagonist of the story because you cannot be that. But in the condition of poverty itself, and that you discover in the encounter with them, in the long-term relationship, the condition of poverty, the protagonist of the story has to be the poor themselves. And you are the scenery in that drama. You surrender, you go back, and they come to the forefront. So it's a matter of prudence, but it's a matter of relationship. If it's a matter of helping, I don't care who does it. If there's a crisis situation and the government can come and help, I don't have a problem with that. The problem is when that becomes a lifestyle. And when we introduce those bureaucracies in the picture, you know what happens. They take control. And most of the time because they hold the money. You know? It's like the Catholic Charities get 70% of the money from the government. Lutheran services, about 75%. Jewish Federation, 80% of the money comes from government. Who is in control? The bishops think they are. They are not. They are what? A quasi-bureaucracy of government. And then they had to make a decision. Either surrender the money when the government places regulations on them that go against their philosophy and their faith, either surrender the money and then now you destroy the ministry and you put people out of their job, and a lot of people who were dependent on you no longer have support, or you surrender your convictions. And what is happening? Many ministries are surrendering their convictions because they don't want to get rid of the money. So bonding. Sometimes people need a job. Sometimes people need food. Sometimes people need just a shoulder to cry on. And sometimes people need a good kick in the rear too to wake them up from the morass of their existence. But how are you going to do that if you don't have a relationship with them? You can't, you know. The next one is categorization. Two persons with the same need but with different values and lifestyles should be treated differently. That is exactly the opposite of the values of the welfare state, because two persons with the same need are treated the same way. You see how different that is? If you make $50,000 and I make $50,000, and you have 4 kids and I have 4 kids, they give you the same money as me. Maybe you are not working and doing your part, I am, but we get the same reward. So what is the incentive? Imagine if you're a Hispanic guy who has been saving a lot of money for a long time, working hard, and you're so happy you got that loan, that mortgage, and you move to a better area, still poor but better, and you are so proud of yourself. And the next day, through Section 8, some family moves side by side your home, that they don't take care of their property, they don't take care of anything, they have a better home than you, and they did nothing to deserve it. What's going to happen to you? So I'm going to give up too. I'm going to join him. There's more reward in his life than me. Why should I be responsible, hardworking, and saving and investing if others are rewarded more without doing that? You see, that is so important to categorize in fear and trembling. But don't stop doing that. And that takes guts. Sometimes what we need is courage in the church. What we need is courage to do what is right. And sometimes we lack that courage to say no. It's so difficult to do it. Or to give people a different alternative. It's not easy. It's not easy. No? The next one is discernment. We discussed that, the difference between an authentic crisis situation and the condition of poverty itself. Intelligent giving, intelligent withholding. That is the way to do it. Sometimes you intelligently give, sometimes you withhold. Employment, and finally, freedom. No, freedom. And what is freedom? Freedom is the capacity and the opportunity to do what is right. That is what authentic freedom is. It's not doing the heck I want. It's the capacity of doing what is right. And when we help people to exercise that capacity towards the good, people discover something in their lives that they did not know was there, and then you move them with them into a better life. And finally, and more importantly than anything, God. Ministries that are specific and clear about the Christian content do better than organizations that do not. The problem is that the government comes in the picture and lures us with money. You know? And sometimes my wife used to work for Lutheran Services, and there was a grant that did not allow her to have a crucifix on her desk. In Catholic charity, sometimes you enter, and if it doesn't say Catholic, you don't know that you are in a ministry. You don't. You cannot discern if it is just another welfare office and not a real Christian ministry. So we had to make a decision. Are we faithful Christians, present and suffering with the poor, or are we the hard hand of the state? It's one or the other. And it's not about how much we have, it's that whatever God bestows upon our hands, we share it with the poor. If it's little, that's what we share with them. We are there with the poor, and we suffer with the poor. Yeah? But ministries don't want to suffer themselves. They tell us that they want to eliminate suffering, but they themselves don't want to suffer. You know? They don't want to suffer with the poor. And we need to make courageous and say, no, we are Christians walking side by side the poor. And if we can help 10 families well, we are not going to try to help 100 the wrong way. And that is a decision that we had to do, to tell Pharaoh to keep his money. Tell the state, do your thing. We're not going to get into the politics, but that's not what we do. We have a different set of values. And if we finish, we have about 10 minutes. I wanted to show you just a few ministries in America to give you examples of what is happening out there. A few examples of good ministries. You can scroll, Mark, to the. No, it's a different. This it's not that.
This is 2.
There should be another. It's not Hope for the Inner City. It's I'm sorry, guys. It's just it's a different set of slides.
So is it case studies?
Yes, case studies in effective compassion. And if you scroll down to the first ministry, you'll see we discussed all that. I just wanted to show you a few examples of ministries that are doing good things in America. That was go back now, Mark. Yes. No.
Keep going.
No.
Forward.
Yes. You passed it. I'm sorry. Keep going. I think it's the next one. Yeah, that was it. That one. It's called Delta Streets Academy in Mississippi. It's in one of the poorest areas in Mississippi. And what makes them unique is that they don't want to hear your excuses. They don't want to hear your excuses. You come here, and you're going to learn. And you know what happens? The kids are learning. Sometimes we hyper-contextualize. We try to understand the realities of the poor so much that then we make them so weak, that is so paternalistic and condescending, and we don't challenge them. You are going to go here, you're going to speak proper English, you're going to tuck your shirt, you're going to learn. You know, there is a great book, it's called No Excuses. Read that book about education. It was written by Abigail and Stefan Sternstrom from Harvard, and they studied 6 schools in America, normally mostly African American, from the poorest areas with all the problems that you can imagine on the inner city, and they were succeeding. And you know why? Because they did not accept your excuses. I don't want to hear of your problems. I don't want to hear about mama. I don't want to hear of your struggles. You're going to come here, you're going to learn. And the kids are learning. Because you are sending a message that you will, and the kids are doing it. So no excuses. You are going to burn the midnight oil. You're going to have strong discipline. You're going to, and we are willing to lose students. You're not going to abide by the rules, go somewhere else. You're going to come here, and you're going to learn. The next one is the Self-Reliance Clause. We discussed that. This is our program. Partners Worldwide, you probably know about them. What makes them unique is that try to incentivize people to get jobs and create businesses in the community. It's a Christian ministry. You should know about them. You go to the next one, Mark. They are focusing on mentoring, training, access to capital, advocacy, and job creation. Get to know them because they can help you create a project that is focused on getting people jobs and making them entrepreneurs. Food security for America. I love this one. Why is that? Food co-ops where you pay for your food. You pay for it. It's very low. You don't pay a lot, but you pay for the food. And the neat thing is that they first have a prayer meeting. They get to know each other. They share a meal. They have a religious service. And only at the end, then they unpack the food from the trucks, and then they get the food at the end of the service. So they're creating community first, and at the end they pay for the food, and they are the workers that do all the work at the same time. They don't pay a lot, but they are paying. That's the key. That's the key, that they are paying. I know churches who are doing this during Christmas. Instead of giving the toys away, they're selling the toys to the families. Instead of just giving the toys to the kids. The families come, not with the kids, and you can pay $0.25, $1 for a nice toy, but you are paying for it. And you know what they tell me many times, these churches, is that they see more men coming. When it's all free, they send the women. But the man wants to feel that he's taking care of his children. And then they see that more men are coming because they can go to their pocket and they can pay for the stuff. And it comes from them to their children. Instead of this stranger coming with a brand new bike to give it to my kids. So it's not, let's go back, no drive-by food distributions. We had this drive-by compassion. Right? We go to a community with a lot of food and we just fire the food at that community and there we go. And that's not the way to create community with people. Members join, they pay, they help unload the trucks, and then the real program begins. The members lead the devotional, they pray together, they support each other, and at the end they get the food. Project Self-Worth, we discussed that at the Water Gardens Ministry, where they have the thrift store that you had to work to get the stuff from the thrift store. And they also have a wall. I saw this. Have a wall where the poor voluntarily take their food stamp cards and they nail that card to the wall. And they say, I know I have the right to this, but I surrender it. And then the ministry gets back to that family, embraces that family, and through work, all the needs of that family are met, and sometimes receiving more money than what otherwise they would have gotten through the food stamps process. And then they do counseling to help that family eventually not even need to help the help of the ministry. That's a wonderful ministry, Pastor Whitford, and get to know them. So they have also an initiative that is called True Charity. We are working with them a little bit on that. We would like to see an area where the government will tell us, let us take care of that area. There will not be welfare in this region, no welfare. And all the ministries in that area and the business community will come together to create new ways of meeting the needs of the families that otherwise will be in welfare in that area. And we'll find new ways of doing this together as a community. We create a model then that other areas in the country could use to meet those needs. Until now, the government has not taken the bait. I don't know what they will ever do. But that is a new way of doing things that may work, a new way of looking at reality. Jobs for Life, we have been, Mark has been trained with Jobs for Life. It's a great organization that basically trains people to get a job. They go through a Bible-based curriculum, and if they end and finish the curriculum together with mentorship, at the end there may be a job for them waiting, or at least they will be ready to do the interviews necessary to get a job. That's another organization. And can you go back? This is very important. The benefits of your program come at the end, not at the beginning. Many ministries, you go there and here's the bag of food. And I hope to see you on Sunday. Yeah, right. They came for the food. You give them the food, they go, you won't see them again. They came for what they were waiting. You know? But if you have the benefit at the end, then you have the opportunity to create a relationship with them. And eventually, hopefully, they'll make changes for their lives. Attack poverty is through partnerships, asset-based mentoring, and create a long-term relationship with the poor. It's another organization that tries to give jobs to people. There is a non-comprehensive approach with a holistic viewpoint. They understand the whole person, but as I said before, they only help you in one area of your life. And then they create a relationship with you, and you eventually will take care of the other parts of your life. This is just an example of a few ministries in the country. I'm going to finish with this one, which I love, is that if you want a bike, you're going to build your own bike. That's the ministry. And the kids go there, and they work, they learn how to put together a bike. And then they do community service to be able to be in the program. And at the end of the program, you have your own bike built by yourself. The kids are learning how to help the community, and at the same time, they are learning the skills, and they are learning that you do something for what you receive. It's a beautiful ministry, very simple, and the kids love it because at the end of the exercise, you build your own bike. That's awesome right there. You know? Simple, involves the kids in a very meaningful way, and teaches them the skills. Again, what I said before, what you receive is what? The instrument to teach you the values that will stay with you when the stuff disappeared. And those values are the ones who are going to eventually help you to get out of poverty and stay out of poverty. You know? Not the stuff that you receive. Thank you so much for your attention. I think that we were 5 minutes past 8, but we tried our best, and I appreciate it. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
So this is great, man. I mean, this sounds fantastic. But this is hard work. So my question is a bit of a cynical, but spend some time with me and you'll understand what I'm saying. How do you convince this white guy living out here in Lake Country that this is the way to go? That writing a check, handing it to an organization that dumps a truckload of food, backpacks, shoes, whatever, how do you convince me that this is the way to go? You know, and I get it, and bureaucracy sucks, and government, you know, once they get their clause in you, they never let them go. I'm on board, but how do you convince this white guy, who, again, living out here in Lake Country, who sees all these smiling brown and black kids when they're getting their books and their backpacks, and, you know, oh, look at me, I'm doing this great thing for all these poor kids in Milwaukee. Oh man, it feels so good. Now I'm gonna drive back out in my new car. And next year we'll do it all again. It's gonna be great. We'll all get together and do it again next year. You know, I mean, how do you like not fall or sorry?
You know what? You know how the only way to do that is by creating alternatives to that exercise. That's it. You create a simple alternative and then offer it to people, like we did with the Self-Reliance Club. The kids were getting the backpacks. Once a director of a social service of the county, of the welfare county, told me, Ismael, but why don't you choose another unmet need that they have and get and meet that other unmet need? And I told her, you know, because that's exactly what I don't want to do. Because if I fill all their holes of need, what is there to do? What is there for them to do? That's not the point. The point is not meeting every unmet need. The point is to help them flourish. So if you create a very simple, practical project that meets the same need, but in a different way, then you put people in a bind. They have to make a choice now. And my experience is that most people will choose the one that engages the poor instead of the one that just simply gives stuff to people. That is my experience. But you have to create an alternative that is practical, is simple, and meets the same need in a different way.
There's a book called When Helping Hurts. Okay? It would say that what you're doing is not helping them so much as hurting them. As this man has gone over, it's incentivizing them to stay.
Yeah, I mean, I
That's how we
completely.
want to convince you that you're not actually helping them.
But I can convince a whole lot of people out.
Yes.
And again, I'm generalizing and picking on.
But you're absolutely right. One thing is to rationally understand it.
A room full of these guys.
Absolutely.
Hey, give me $20.
Absolutely.
They're going to make an impact. And, oh yeah, that sounds great. Let's do it.
One of the things is to understand with a reason. Yeah. Yeah.
We folks and we're bringing them, training them, spend time with them, invite them in your home for a week.
We are not disincarnated. We are not disincarnated minds, you know. We are body and soul human beings, and the emotions are part of who we are as human beings. So we cannot make. It's not simply having all the great ideas. I had known a lot of people who, you know, you ask them, should I help the poor? Yes, I should. Yeah, we should help the poor. They had never moved a finger for the poor, but they understand rationally that we should, you know. So understanding is not enough, because the emotions get in the way, and you see an immediate result. When you give something, you see an immediate result that appeals to the emotions, to the eyes, to the physicality, and it gives you, as I said before, the illusion of success, because you see a transaction. But the only way to alter that is to create an alternative and offer it to people. That's the only way, because now they have a choice to make. It's not either the kids go without school supplies or with them, is how to do that. And now it's on their hands to decide. And most people decide because we are made in the image and likeness of God. We understand that the best way is to engage. Let me ask you, there's no one in this world that we love more than our children. Do we always give to our children every time they ask us for something? Do we? And why not? Because we instinctively understand that it's not good for them. Those who you love the most, you challenge, no? And you are tough on them because one day you're not going to be there, and they're going to have to fend for themselves. So we challenge them. And then to the children of the poor, we just dump stuff at them. Which one you love the most? Why don't treat the children of the poor with the same love you treat your own?
You know Michael at Acton.
Yes.
The gentleman that Ishmael knows helped produce a really great documentary called Poverty, Inc. and talks exactly about the predicament that we're all in, how we think about things incorrectly. It's on Netflix, so I'd highly recommend, if you want to start a conversation with people and start to change your minds. Poverty Inc.
It's excellent.
It is beautiful. It's just great. And people go, oh, well, I got to stop doing that. And then you can start talking about, what if we're going to stop doing that? What are we going to start doing?
I don't want to jump, but there is an example that I love in that movie, that a church in America who adopted a community in Africa that needed eggs. There were not enough eggs there. So they inundated that community with eggs. And suddenly what happened? Everybody had eggs this year. And what happened with the egg farmers in that community? They went out of business because they could not sell eggs. And then they killed their chickens, because why have chickens that you have to feed when you cannot sell the eggs? Well, what happens the next year? Well, the church changed their mind and then adopted a different community somewhere else and stopped sending eggs. And now you have a community that had no chickens and no eggs. So the community was worse 1 year later than they were before they intervened. You see how the emotions sometimes get in the way? But the only way to break that is to offer people a tangible alternative that makes sense and is simple. And when you do that, people begin to change.
Well, and I think it has to go hand in hand with relationships.
Absolutely.
And that's, you know, like, when you see your interaction with an individual causing life transformation, you know, that's the ultimate, you know, and seeing themselves, you know, as, you know, reflecting the image of God as well. So there's got to be, I mean, when I started out working in local mission, it was like, oh my gosh, every place in Milwaukee was a faith-based institution originally, but they lost their mission along the way.
Absolutely.
And I love the fact that you said, you know, tell Pharaoh to keep his money if you're not going to be able to share who Jesus is.
And let me say something about this. I have known ministries that don't receive government funding but are eager to get it. They are going in the wrong way. And there are others who receive government money and are making a sincere effort to substitute that money, and they are going in the right way. It's not where you are, it's in what direction you are moving. So don't feel bad if you receive money now, but you have to stand your ground and say, we're going to change this. And we're going to make a real effort to move in the different direction. You are doing the right thing, you know. That's very important. Before there is another question, there is information about the Institute. I want you to take it with you, please, and don't forget to take it. Yes, Pastor.
Interesting about the, you know, not taking Pharaoh's money. I get that and I believe in it. But the Milwaukee voucher thing, we're a voucher high school. And what's nice is the tax money goes into mom's hands, mom and dad's hands, and then they choose where they want to go. And all of a sudden, parents are empowered to make that free market choice. And now we have to serve our customers in a way that I think honors some of the market demand. Which is very interesting, because I agree with you, but at the same time, it's like we're advancing the gospel every day because parents have said, the money follows my child, and I want him to go there. And when you were asking how do you get the white families out here to come in, interesting, the Lord gave us a building in a white community, and we're 100% African American, basically, kids, 9th and 10th graders. And I found that instead of asking more white families to get involved and help, we're asking the young men in our school to serve our neighborhood and flip it and give them the skills of building, creating. And it's just a different way of thinking about it. Is how do we use this opportunity to build our young men from the city, to have them the opportunity to come into our neighborhoods and be of value to a lot of widows and elderly people. And all of a sudden, it's like the young men are thinking, I have a value, which is way more incredible than another white guy coming in to help me. I'm helping them. And they're fixing patios, they're fixing handicap ramps, they're fixing garages, and all of a sudden, like every neighborhood's going like, one neighbor came over and said, for a year we were trying to figure out how we help this poor widow. And our husband died. He said, we saw you guys demolishing the garage and rebuilding it and stuff. Like, that's pretty cool. And all of a sudden, they stop asking, how do we get more white families to help? And say, how does one guy like you empower 10 young men from the city that didn't have so I just want to share this.
Wonderful, wonderful, yes. And I agree with you 100%. I love vouchers. I think that we're going to pay those taxes and we have a better alternative. That's moving in the right direction, you know? I better to send that money to where that parent chooses, you know, to give the alternative to the parent to choose where he wants his education. The reality is that more than 70% of African Americans are in favor of school choice, for them to be empowered to send their children where they choose. And those who are supposed to be our patrons, quote unquote, are against that. Why is that? Because they're losing power. And the power is now in the parent to take their children to wherever they know their children is going to be better educated. So I am with you 100% in school choice and vouchers.
If it came directly from the government, that'd be very scary. Quickly tell you
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. As I say, in fear and trembling, we do certain things. Anyone else? Any comment? Please, feel free.